Meeting of the Friendship Heights Village Council to order. I'd like to thank you all for being patient with us, both those who are streaming and those who are here tonight. I want to ask anyone or make sure that anyone who wants to make a comment to the Village Council this evening to make certain that they have signed up on the sheet over to my right and your left. I will call people in the order in which sign-ups have occurred. And with that, I have one announcement to make. We met in closed session as a council just before this meeting to obtain legal information about Page Park from our attorney. There was no action taken at that meeting. I do expect discussion about Page Park during our meeting this evening. With that, let me grab the sign-up sheet. Thank you, Jason. First on the list, Jim Brodsky and Marietta Ethier. Yes, please go to the microphone and talk directly into the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Is that good?
You may need to punch the button at the bottom of the... It's on? Okay. Talk directly into the microphone, then, please.
We need a grandkid to work the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's our privilege to make this brief statement. My name is Jim Brodsky. My colleague, Marietta Eiter, is to my left. We're going to talk to you briefly within our 3 minutes. We are residents of Somerset House condominiums, so your neighbors that away. We're here on behalf of that community and to talk to you for a minute or two about the community, and then for the other minute about some concerns we have about the 5500 Wisconsin Avenue project that's going up, the Donahoe Brooks Brothers project. But we basically are here to introduce ourselves. I chair the External Affairs Committee of our community. Our community is 3 high-rise buildings, for those who may not be familiar with it. We have 400 units, about 600 residents in those 3 buildings. They were built about 30 years ago over a 10-year period. We're your neighbors. We believe in good relations, and we have shared interests alike. We had your chair who came and visited our committee the other week, and it's our privilege just to come and introduce ourselves to you. I will yield to my colleague Marietta just to talk a little bit about our interest in there.
Mr. Brodsky, let me just make sure. You each have 3 minutes to speak. So have you finished your comments?
I'll wrap.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll take every one of the minutes.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Is that better? Yes. Okay. We have 2 major concerns about the 5500 project. One, as you know, the Somerset Complex owns the Somerset Terrace, that street. But the developers dedicated a public easement, which the easement states that it can be used for ordinary traffic. And our contention is that heavy trucks, we don't see too many trucks that are normal and ordinary traffic. So our contention is that construction vehicles should not be allowed. We're also concerned, obviously, about the safety of our residents. We are no longer of an age where we can leap across the street like gazelles, so we need a little more time to cross the street, and as you know, vehicles making that right turn oftentimes make it very quickly in order to make the light. So they, even though there is a bump that seeks to delay traffic, oftentimes vehicles go very, very quickly. Our other concern is with reference to pedestrian safety along the covered walkway on the sidewalk outside of the 5500 project. During all phases of the project, we want to make sure that there is sufficient restrictions and all kinds of assurances that the pedestrians are going to be able to safely go around the construction. or go through the construction. So those are our two major concerns. We hope that the village will also join us in making sure that these concerns get proper attention from the developers and also from the planning and permitting authorities of Montgomery County, who are going to have a great say in the kind of restrictions that are placed on the construction of that facility.
Yeah.
And
Nope, but Mary Ann? Yeah, I'll just conclude. I appreciate it. We'll, I think they say this in the Congress, we'll yield back any time we have. We appreciate the opportunity to be before you. We look forward to developing an even more vibrant working relationship between our two communities. We share a lot of interests in addition to a common border. We hope your park goes through and gets, I love the park that you're building there. And we thank you for yielding some time to us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charles Schwartz.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Charles Schwartz from 4620 North Park Avenue. On June 26, 2023, this notice was posted. Big, bold letters. Over a year later, the park is still closed. And I see, from what I've read, that we're not moving at all. Maybe a little one step forward, 2 steps back. We're relying on the words of a contractor who doesn't seem to know many of the rules. And I think the communication has been subpar, just let me say it that way. The only report that I've seen is one by Bobby Pastronk, which was very detailed and comprehensive and gave a lot of information. But other than that, I think we're getting 1 paragraph updates every 2 months or so, and that's not enough. I think that also I'm concerned, and maybe you spoke about this in your meeting. There's presumably an exemption for making the pergola area ADA compliant, an exemption. It seems that the committee is anxious to use this exemption. And my point is, even if there is an exemption, why make that area non-compliant? We have people who are unable to use the pergola if they can't get up a ramp or whatever is put in there. So I'm very concerned about that, and I'd like, hopefully that was dealt with. I also want to say this, that I think we should hire an expert to see that this project is carried through expeditiously, perhaps also a lawyer who knows ADA and permitting requirements. And it's been too long and too much money spent on it, and only 2/3 already. And we have to just finish the park. One more thing I want to tell people, on the website, you can see the original contract. It's not put up there, only the revision is put up there. If you look at the original contract, you'll see the lack of care that was exhibited in starting this project. It's a contract that is awful, and I don't think was ever reviewed by anybody who has any legal background.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Muller.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Al Muller. I've lived in the Elizabeth since 1992, and I've lived in the village for more than 50 years. I was puzzled and frankly disappointed at the comments of the treasurer, Mr. Schaefer, at last month's council meeting. You will recall that I made a few suggestions on how his report could be made more transparent and helpful to residents who attend or listen to these meetings. Specifically, and I repeat myself, number one, in response to his concern about expenditures for capital improvements, I suggested that every month a summary of the capital expenditures be reported, as well as the cumulative total for the year. Number two, I further suggested that the estimated capital expenditures for the future that were previously determined by village consultants be reported in detail to the public and be kept public on the village website. And number three, I suggested that the previous practice of many decades be reinstated, and the monthly financial reports given to the council be made public again, and that they be made available before the public meeting, such as we're having, and on the village website before the public meeting, so that questions concerning the income and expenditures can be asked at the start of the current meeting, as we are questioning now, as is done in most condominiums. I know Mr. Schaefer is a rental building, but the condominiums all have that available before the public meeting. These were and are all suggestions intended to be constructive, made in the spirit of being helpful. It was therefore dismaying to me that the treasurer responded to me last month with a, what I thought, self-serving political statement by describing all the alleged improvements he had initiated without addressing my current valid concerns. It is of further concern to me that all the treasurer's reports for the last year, which are posted on the village website, have not been made at these public monthly meetings, so that all residents might be aware of them in a timely manner and able to ask questions in a timely manner. June 30th was the end of our village's current budget year. Why hasn't the summary of current budget line items, expenses, which I know the council receives every month before this public meeting, been released to the public before this meeting tonight? Some simple questions, Mr. Schaefer. How much money is in our treasury now? How much money is in the capital reserve now? Was there a surplus or deficit this fiscal year? Mr. Treasurer, please answer.
Thank you. Roger Cacchetti?
As some of you may know, I spent many satisfying years doing international strategic business planning for ComSat, IBM, and VeriSign, and have recently noticed what was important factor we had to deal with, particularly in IBM, in the context of the planning efforts now underway by the DC government and especially the Montgomery County Planning Department in the sector plan. The phenomenon that we often dealt with, I call, or we called, pretendism. Pretendism is when somebody proposes that we do this, that, and the other thing, and we pretend that Microsoft or Apple doesn't exist. That's pretendism. And the reason I bring that up is that the orthodoxy in the planning community, in particular the Montgomery County planning community, is riddled, in my judgment, with pretendism in three areas I would point out. And I think it's important as the council comes to deal with the sector plan revision that you take note of these and other pretendisms. Pretendism number one, we can increase population density without any impact on crime and safety. Just not true. Pretendism number two, we can increase population density and will not have any traffic congestion or traffic problems because everybody will be a teacher or a firefighter riding their bicycles to Glen Echo and Tyson's Corner in the middle of January. Pretendism number three, we will not create a heat dome over Friendship Heights by putting up more concrete buildings. Steel and concrete don't get hot in that area. It's only other areas that suffer from heat domes from overconstruction. As I think the council well knows, we were until 2 years ago the most densely populated place in the United States, the population density being about 80,000 people per square mile. Some people say, well, that doesn't include this, that, and the other thing. No, but that doesn't include either Somerset or Wisconsin Place or the 1,400 new units that are coming up all over the place here. So I'm pretty confident that Friendship Heights will regain its status as the most densely populated place in the United States, according to the Census Bureau. My point is that we need development. I'm not anti-development. We need planned development. And I know that ChatGPT would say that Friendship Heights only has 80,000 people per square mile. That species is capable of 500,000 people per square mile. This is an Amazon warehouse for human beings. We can cram more in there. No, population density is not something that needs to be improved in Friendship Heights. Those who advocate it, we should say, you've accomplished your goal. Thank you. Leave us alone. Look at other parts of the county that need to increase population density. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caccetti. Cameron Moody?
I'm Cameron Moody from the Elizabeth. As some of you might know, I'm an advanced practice provider at a local university hospital, and I can't afford any housing other than the housing I currently live in. So as someone who is, by all measures, high income, it's troubling that my one-bedroom condo is the only thing I can afford to live in our immediate area. Likewise, my friends that have terminal degrees as lawyers, doctors, and dentists clearly, plainly, and regularly bemoan the fact that they cannot afford anything but their one-bedroom condos. The only way to alleviate that pressure on housing in our area is to provide more housing to everyone. I think that dubious claims about population density, whether the presence of people directly result in crime and traffic, is problematic. We haven't had any new housing in our area for the last 20 years, with Chase Point being the last place that was built. I think it's important to realize that a lot of the malaise around our area with new people, differing socioeconomic and age backgrounds is because what is here is aging and has been determined to be unattractive. We've had places like Bethesda and Tyson's Corner leapfrog us, the first urban district in Montgomery County, because many people have deemed us unattractive. I'll share a story. I was coming back from dinner downtown. I was on a shuttle bus because the Red Line was under construction, and several groups of people talked about how undesirable Friendship Heights was. It wasn't just one or two groups of friends. It kind of spread through the bus like a wave as I'm getting off in front of Chevy Chase Pavilion, and everyone talked about how nice Friendship Heights used to be, how they used to come to Friendship House all the time, and how there's just no reason to come here anymore. Thankfully, we're seeing a change. We're seeing more interest in the area. I think that's because of the current new wave of development and potential wave of development. But I think that if we pretend that nothing needs to be done, we're going to continue to go from stride to slide, which is how people in other parts of the metropolitan area apparently view us. I don't think that the answer is to tell people they need to go somewhere else if they can't afford to live here. I hear that as a very common reprise. Well, maybe you need to go to school, and maybe you need a better education, and maybe you need a better job. Again, as someone who, by all measures, is high income and can't afford anything other than a one-bedroom condo, saying that people need to go to Gaithersburg or Germantown to live is not the answer. I can tell you anecdotally that in the millennials group, every time we meet, when people talk about house hunting, they're talking about we're looking in Clarksburg, we're looking in Germantown, and we're still going to have to commute into the city to work.
Mr. Moody, I
Which
need
means
to ask you to
I'm
finish your
wrapping it
comments.
up. That is where you get your traffic from. People coming down 270, people coming down Connecticut Avenue, people coming down Wisconsin Avenue is what causes traffic. I walk to work, walk to the metro. Many of them walk to the metro, and that's the answer to more people, more shops and restaurants, more diversity, and less traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Dan Dozier?
I'm Dan Dozier, and I'm president of the Carlton Condominium Association. First, I hadn't intended on saying this, but associate myself with Cameron's remarks. I agree 100% with him. But I have two small things I'd like to ask. One is, we get these agendas, and they're printed on 2 pages, even though it's a page and a half. Why not print them on 1 page? It saves paper. It saves money, and it saves wasting resources. Number 2, I'd like to request that the village consider establishing an electronic recycling program for the village. I think it would be very helpful. We all have, I'll bet that pretty much everybody in this room has things left over from the electronic age that we no longer use. Those things can be recycled. And I'd like to ask that the village help us. And so thank you. And also, one final thing. I worked hard to support many of you who are elected on the council. I have a lot of respect for this body, but I ask that you be more transparent about what's going on with Page Park.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to provide public comment to the council?
Yes, thank you. I am Patricia Canesa. I live in 5500 Friendship Boulevard and the Willoughby building. And in reality, everybody has their own issues in their head. I have my own demons also. And certainly my demons are related to climate change. And we are very passive and looking into what is the major disaster that we are confronting with changes in the climate and the lack of development in the Friendship Heights area for people to recognize when there is an alert. Yes, yesterday and the day before, we had wildfires in the northern Virginia area, just 7 miles away from here, in front of the expressway. We could see them, and there is no action at this point in terms of how we are going to alert our population, how we are going to inform them about what is supposed to happen, and at the same time, what is the infrastructure of each one of these buildings that can take responsibility of at least watering the plants and dealing in a very simple way with a problem that is going to be more and more serious every time. So my appeal is for some way that might be electronic, might be through a siren, might be through any kind of technology that we have today, but how we can inform our public and to tell them that there is a danger outside, not only inside of fire.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to present?
Since we're talking about the environment.
Would you give us your name
yes,
and
I'm
where
sorry.
you live?
I'm Lois Forrester. I'm at 4620 North Park Street. And I'm one of those people that goes around and picks up trash for 2 reasons. One, it's great exercise, everybody who doesn't do it. Try it sometime, you get some good works out. But 2, it's a real mess around here sometimes. I can pick up lots of garbage. A lot of it along this street in particular where people park. The number of beer cans you can pick up on some weekends is phenomenal. And just trash from probably construction, renovators and things like that, parking in front of buildings. I mean, you see food bags all the time, possibly people from the medical building that's coming out. But it's a pretty messy neighborhood. And that surprises me, being, I think our average income is fairly decent around here. And I don't know what to do about it. I wish businesses, the condominiums and apartment buildings would sweep the curb be required to sweep the curb. There is so much trash, and if you're worried about the environment and the microplastics, the amount of microplastics, and I'm talking about a dime or less, that I try to pick up, that is going into our watershed, and that is going into drinking water, and that is going into the fish and other species that are in our environment. So I'm going to talk about how messy our neighborhood can get sometimes, and I can prove it with the bags that I have picked up already.
Thanks very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, no one else, then any comments from the council? Yes.
I'd like to,
Councilmember Salt?
yes, add an agenda item under old business, which would be discussion and suggestions for is this on? Yeah, moving forward on Page Park.
Okay. Is there any objection to that? Seeing none, that will be suggestions for moving forward on Page Park will be added as within the bullet or after the bullet on an update on Page Park permit application. Seeing no other comments from the council, Mayor White, your announcements.
Thank you. As of right now, there is no village council meeting scheduled for August. The next scheduled council meeting will be Monday, September 9th.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the minutes for the public session of June 10th council meeting. Councilmember Salt?
I move to, adopt the minutes that are under tab 2.
Is there support for that motion? Councilman R. supports. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Abstentions, 1. Me. Treasurer's report. Councilmember Schaefer.
Okay, thank you. Well, this will be timely because I wanted to use my time to talk about the finances around Page Park. And some of you may know this, some of you may know parts of it, but the original contract that was signed was for about $852,000. Now, under that contract, we made 2 progress payments of 1/3 each, left the balance of $284,000. That was all done by the previous council. And then, under this council, in October 2023, we made an additional payment of $100,000. And that was divided as follows. About $93,000 went directly to our contractor to pay down the balance due on the final payment. That was money that was not due until the park was completed, but that was a vote the council approved. The remaining $7,300 of that $100,000 went to pay off an invoice. The council agreed to pay for additional permit-related costs that was paid by our contractor. So the total we are out of pocket to date. So the total we are out of pocket to date is $668,000 plus, obviously, some legal fees we may have incurred along the way. Now, the additional costs we're facing, and it's hard to get a complete accounting of it, but there is an outstanding additional invoice for $4,000 for engineering services, and for many of these, it's not 100% clear at this point who will pay them. I'm just discussing the remaining expenses. There is a proposal outstanding, and this would have to get put out for bids, but the quote we got was for about $35,000 for a stormwater management study, which is something that is required by the county. That's not to do the work. That's to do the study to see what stormwater work may be required. There's additional legal fees we're going to have to incur. The council may decide to hire an attorney specializing in ADA compliance. There may be additional, the council may decide to incur additional professional cost to have somebody supervise and sort of shepherd the project through the final approval and completion phases. There will be additional change orders related to things we are obligated to pay if they go over what was budgeted in the contract. So an example of that would be the railings. It's almost a certainty that because this contract was signed like 2 years ago, that the final cost for the railings will be more than what we budgeted. We might even need additional railings beyond what was anticipated. Those costs we will have to pay for. And the final piece is the cost remaining to complete the areas that are still under consideration by the county's Department of Permitting Services, or DPS. Depending on what they come back with, and at this point we simply don't know because we're still waiting for final decisions, those costs could be minor, they can be very, very substantial. And we're still waiting on what the county is going to come back with. And that leads me to another point I've been making every month about our non-operating expenses. And we, as I've said, we don't budget for those. So the $191,000 that's remaining to the contractor under our contract, in addition to all the other potential costs I've outlined, those will come 100% from our savings. And as I've said before, we don't set aside any funds from our revenue to pay for future capital or future construction expenses. 100% of the money we're taking in is paying our day-to-day administrative costs. It should go without saying that there's a big difference between reporting capital expenses and setting aside money to pay for them. Those are two completely separate things. And because we don't have an operating surplus, on our operating expenses, we don't have additional money to set aside for those future construction and capital costs. So what that means is, unless we change the path that we're on, at some point we are going to go through our savings, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. Certainly not in the next 5 years, but if things do go badly with the park, it could be in the next 10 years. And if you consider that the village is 100 years old, we should at least be considering where our current path will leave us in the next 10 years. And the last thing, if anybody, and I always say this, wants to meet with me, I have office hours by appointment. I'm not allowed to take questions at this meeting, but I'm happy to meet with people at a time that's good for you. I don't have preset office hours. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Tyler.
I just have one question. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Schaefer, on the park budget, but are we going to go over the treasurer budget?
Could you be more specific?
It says we were discussing the treasurer report.
Where are you looking?
On the agenda.
Well, the report I decided to give was on the
So you're not giving a treasury report, you just gave a report on the park?
Well, that's my report for this month. Next month, we did get the year-end reports, as was stated, but those are not really audited, and I have still some questions. I think those numbers are still settling out.
Okay, that's all I asked.
Yeah,
'cause I was
and I
looking for the
believe
treasurer's
all of
report.
our balances are posted on the website. Is that correct?
The treasurer's reports are posted on the website.
Right,
Yes.
so they're there for anybody who wants to see them. Okay.
Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, we'll go to the village manager's report. Mayor White.
Thank you. First of all, to respond to Mr. Dozier's comment, I'm happy to report that we have just lined up a household electronics recycling / donation drive. The date
And
will be...
if I could add, I already told him that.
I was wondering that myself as well. September 14th, and we've just lined this up with Goodwill. They will have a truck parked out here. This is something they used to do on the Geico parking lot, but they don't do that anymore with Geico, so we reached out to them separately. And they will accept some clothing and household goods and some other things in addition to electronics. So we will get a flyer from them, and we will post it shortly, but it will be Saturday, September 14th. And we hope it's a one-time, but we hope to do it regularly with them. It used to be an annual event with Geico, but now we hope to carry it on just directly with Goodwill. Another item, just to follow up from a public comment at last month's meeting regarding some lighting difficulties on Wisconsin Avenue, that we had a report that there was some inadequate lighting and some lights out on the west side of Wisconsin Avenue, and we followed up with initially the State Highway Administration, because those lights are on the side of a state highway, and then we were told it was Pepco problem, so Pepco is now working on those lights, and I want to thank the chairman personally for going out there at night himself and reporting that those lights were out and verifying which lights they were. Also followed up on the Metro, Friendship Heights Metro Station lighting report that we had, that there was a very dim area on the walkway as you approach the rotunda from the garage by Whole Foods. There's a mechanical closet there with 2 lights that are on, but they're quite dim, so the resident was reporting that, and we're following up with Metro to get that taken care of. And then I'm going to have Jason give us an update on chatbot.
Thank you, Julian. I'll make this quick. So we're finishing up our testing of the Holly chatbot, and we are happy to announce that the chatbot will go live on August 1st. We will make the announcement outside of this meeting, of course, in the newsletter. We'll send notices to the buildings and all other communication, social media and whatnot. And we'll also have a community training session for residents to come and really learn more about how the chatbot works, how it could benefit them. That has yet to be scheduled, but that too will be announced.
Mr. Mansfield, anything else? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to committee reports. Report from Public Safety Committee meeting of June 17th.
Hello, everybody. The Safety Committee had a lot of things to cover, and I'll start off with, there was input on the Montgomery County school system to come up with a better plan and a safe plan to help the student living in the Willoughby. We all know that the traffic gets backed up during the school year, not in the summer, but during the school year when the bus comes to pick up the one young man, I believe it is, that lives in the Willoughby on Friendship side. Julian was going to look into talking with the public school system to see what can be done to help us. The problem, if you're not familiar with it, is early in the morning. What happens is the bus pulls over, but as we know with the school buses, their stop signs go out. It takes the driver quite a bit of time to help upload this one child onto the bus. As a result, the traffic at this intersection is blocked every which way possible for a very long time. So we're now trying to see if we can find a better solution that will work for all and still help the young child get onto the bus, as well as traffic to continue to move around. So, Julian, have you heard anything back from them?
Not specifically. We went to Andrew Friedson's office, County Council members Friedson's office, to get a contact at MCPS, and we were routed to the right person, who's the head of the transportation systems for MCPS. So we've connected with him, but we're waiting to hear back.
Okay, great. So hopefully, as I said, we can find a better path forward for everybody involved in this situation. Do we have any update on the crosswalk stripes? Are we going to put an RFP out, or what are we going to do?
We will put an RFP out for striping the remaining crosswalks that are not the brick paved crosswalks. There's 6 crosswalks with stripes that were not covered with the previous work with the speed humps.
Okay. I've spoken with both Julian and Jason on this. And I don't think many people in the community, and I may be incorrect, are aware that the village does have an emergency alert system. And a while back, it was put in the newsletter and on the website for people to sign up. And this alert system, we're probably going to push another round of efforts to get people to sign up so that you receive notification on anything that is of an emergency that happens within the village, such as the power going out or different things like that, so that people have some type of communication from the village when there is an emergency. So we'll try to figure out when we're going to do another push for that one, and we'll just put it out in the newsletter again of how you should sign up for that. Thanks to our council president, who met with the business managers from the Gap and the Banana Republic. As some of you may know who are attending the safety committee meetings, we have a meeting that is designed specifically for the business representatives within the village to meet with us and to build better relationships, as well as with the police departments, so that everybody can be on the same page and they have an open space that they feel that they can talk about and ask questions, and we can find out what their issues are. The Gap and the Banana Republic have been two spots of businesses within the village that have always had, I don't want to say issues, but problems in getting response, not getting response, reporting, not reporting. So we're trying to build that relationship so that they know that the village is here for them, because they are part of our village and all the shops on the Wisconsin Avenue, but in particular those two locations. And thanks to our president, council president, he did make a in-person meeting with both managers of both properties, and to find out that both of them are making internal improvements. And also talking with Montgomery County Police, it appears that the drop in calls and reports for crime coincide with what appears to be going on within those two particular stores, which is that they've come up with new policies and what they want to do and how they're handling the theft that's been going on. It's not as high as it used to be. And Councilman, you have anything else to say with that?
No, I think that they were, other than that, they were pleased that I stopped by to talk with them about the efforts underway in the Public Safety Committee, and to suggest that they send a representative to the meetings in order to stay up to date on what's going on, and pleased that there is a police presence that the county, that the village is providing.
We've made a lot of strides in connecting with the businesses and also with the property managers and residential apartment managers within the village. We have separate workshops for businesses, for buildings, and for the residents, because each of these groups have different issues and different concerns. And there are also different programs within the police department with Montgomery County that may help each one of these entities. So we try to work at least, have these workshops at least 2 to maybe 3 times a year. But it seems to be beneficial because the attendance is growing with the businesses especially. The drone, I'm sure many of you have heard about rumors of the drones. Well, the drones are coming, and the drones will be here, and the drones are here. The drones are active right now in Silver Spring and Wheaton. The drones were recently approved by the Montgomery County Council to go in Gaithersburg and Bethesda. Bethesda, once they have the location, there's a couple of buildings that they are looking at, and it has to be the highest peak of property where the drone will best benefit everybody around, which includes Friendship Heights. We live in an area that is on the border of the NOTAM system, if any of you are familiar because of the government. It's a line, it's that invisible line that no planes, no this, no that can fly through and fly over. Our village sits right on that line. So there is an agreement that most police departments have. DC has it with the federal government simply because of the jurisdiction, and DC is in the entire no-fly zone. So there is a special agreement for them. There is also a special agreement with Montgomery County PD because we're on that cusp of the border of that line. That being said, the drone will cover down to the DC borderline. So we benefit without having to pay for it. We are planning to have a presentation so that everybody can understand that what the drone is not doing. The drone is not standing in front of your windows at your buildings, looking inside and peering inside, as some people may think. The drone, they did a program on 60 Minutes a couple of months ago where Montgomery County's drone program was used as a template out in California, out in LA, in Rodeo Drive area, to help see how it could help them with mitigating both capturing someone, seeing things in real time, and cutting down on false arrest as well. Looking at pictures that look like someone has a weapon and they really don't. It's a cell phone or a pen. So it was a very interesting program. If you Google back and go back through YouTube, you'll probably can pull the program up. But since then, Montgomery County's drone program has been used throughout the United States and some other states as well to help them set their program up. The drone will go into effect, I believe he said September of this year. The funding was put in place, and we're going to try and set up a presentation possibly in August. I think that's what we were looking at, July or August, the end of July, which is very close, or mid-August, before the program goes into effect. So just so that you can have a comfort of understanding what it means to have this drone around. It won't just be flying out there willy-nilly. It's only going to go when they get a call and they need extra assistance because, as many of you may or may not know, there are not a lot of police assigned to this area, and we live in a very large area. In fact, there is only one. And what has also happened with the increase of theft in downtown Bethesda is that the off-duty police are assigned by the Apple and Nike store, and because Nike has been hit time and time, maybe 3 times a week. So they have them there. They're hoping the drone will help in downtown Bethesda area as well. The live feed cameras are also going to start. As many of us know that there are cameras everywhere, but now the cameras are going to be in real time. So when a call is made, they capture it right then, not delayed time moments. So that's going to help a great deal, especially with the increase of new buildings and development in this area. Another discussion came up about our wonderful Willard Avenue speed. And as we all don't like to hear, but we have to understand, Willard does not belong to the village. It belongs to the county. We have worked with Montgomery County PD on special operations to try and get the speed signs up to try and slow traffic down. We got it for about a week. It's gone. We don't know if we can ever get it back again, but also it came out that nobody really was speeding on that road. We all know that that's a fallacy, but the average, and that's what they take it as, the average speed was below the speed limit posted. What did come up was that an idea is that we could get our own speed sign and we could donate it to Montgomery County PD. And we would have a permanent speed sign on Willard Avenue. Now, the types of signs, Montgomery County gave us some ideas of the signs, but while we were at the MML conference down in Ocean City, several of us got a chance to meet with a company that does the different signs. So we're going to look and see what type of signs that we could purchase and maybe donate that, and it would be dedicated to Willard Avenue, which would help the police see how fast, and plus, but it would really let people know how fast they're going, and it may slow them down some. Also, the mayor of Chevy Chase met with our village manager and requested, they understand we have police meetings with our business people and our residents in our village, and they would like their police representative to participate in our program, which is really good because Chevy Chase backs up to us and is very similar in how they're laid out as we are. They have residents, they have high-rises, they have businesses, and we have the same, except they have a lot of police. But they're going to start joining us for that. And there was some sad information that we received, unfortunately, while we were in Ocean City about a dog attack. And unfortunately, there has been another dog attack, this time in front of the Willard Towers. But the dog attack that happened earlier, at the end of June, occurred over in front of the Willoughby. The attacking dog has not been caught, nor has the owner, and there are no cameras that could feed over to that far. The dog that was attacked was a service dog and was severely injured. My understanding is that the dog belonged to a young lady who is in school and cannot afford to get the dog well. So it's a bad situation. The other situation was a person who followed another person in at the Elizabeth, and fortunately no one was hurt. And it was not a good situation by any means, and they got up to that person's apartment door by following them up there through the elevator. The person was able to defend them off, and the police were called. But the unfortunate situation is that the person didn't press charges. So I personally understand that. I have been in a situation where I had to make a decision whether to testify or not in person. But the option that you always have is that you can write a letter to the judge through your attorney, which is what I did. Part of it was because of my line of work. I, at that time, did not need to be a target more than I already was a target. So I wrote a letter to the judge. Despite what many people think, that letter helped, and that person went away for 10 years. So if you ever hear of anybody, or if you become a victim yourself, please think about it, because that person is still back out on the street. And you could help save somebody else. And unfortunately, a couple of days ago, another young lady was followed into her building. Fortunately, she was not attacked, but nothing happened. So the police can help, but we ask that you help also. And I know it's hard because sometimes you don't want people to know that this happened to you or how vulnerable you could have been. Hey, I used to carry a gun for a living and a license to carry it, and it still happened to me. So there are ways that you can help, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to court and stand up and testify against that person. So again, please tell anyone that you know if they have been attacked, or they've been followed, or they feel that they've been assaulted in some way. Don't hesitate. Call 911. We talk to the police all the time, and I immediately contacted the police when we got those calls down in Ocean City. So as you can see, the safety committee has been very busy. We have a final report that we will give out for the whole year, and we'll get to that into old business. So thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a report from a Climate Change and Environment Committee meeting of July 2nd. Not sure who's presenting that. Councilmember
Yes.
Salt.
Thank you. This will be quite brief. And as Julian mentioned, the suggestion to recycle electronics originated from this committee. And if any of you have tried to do this yourself, it's very difficult. You have to drive out to wherever it is, Gaithersburg or something. So it is a real benefit that, to my knowledge, other communities don't have, to have this ability to just come to the village center, with your stuff. Not just electronics, but others, but electronics are really what's difficult to get rid of, safely anyway. I'd like to let folks know that we are looking into whether we qualify for the Sustainable Maryland program, which is a certification program to advance community environmental protection, and we're working with the village staff on that. And a heads up to expect that the committee will share with the council in the coming months information on planting strategies and weather awareness and how to protect yourself from climate change events.
Thank you. Councilwoman Salt, the village manager and I met with a county agency that has funds, a nonprofit agency in the county that has funds available for projects like solar panels on our roof, potentially for other green types of activities. And perhaps at a next meeting of the Climate Change and Environment Committee, either the village manager or I could present that material to the committee to see whether that's something you want to think about or make a recommendation about.
The chairman of the committee is right here, and I think we're aware of it, but if you have a word, Patricia?
No, I was a little more concerned about the bird that just crashed here and is dead there. And since we started our campaign in climate change with birds hitting the windows, there is the dead bird. That is a footnote to our conversation. Yes, my main concern is the situation that Friendship Heights has regarding the reception of funding. And certainly there is opportunities for funding in several places where we can explore, but we need to have first a house where to house this funding. I cannot accept even a gift, or any kind of transfer of funds unless I really know if there is the capacity for this place to harbor that funding and to manage the funding. That's our main concern at this point.
Thank you.
We can invite the treasurer to our next meeting, but I'm confident we can work something out.
Thanks. Yes, Mayor White.
Just a quick comment for those listening who might have items to donate that can't wait for Goodwill. There is Green Drop in the parking lot next to the old Mazza Gallery, and they accept almost any item. They're open every day of the week, and it's very simple to walk down Friendship Boulevard. And I've done it myself. I don't own a car, so I understand the challenges, but it's a great resource right in our backyard.
Thank you. Parenthetically, having dropped off electronic equipment at the county recycling service up at Gaithersburg, it's amazing it is a long drive to get up there. It's amazing what's going on up there. Yeah. Okay, that takes us into old business, and we have an update on the Page Park permit application. Councilmember Measy.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure this report will not satisfy everybody, but let me tell you where we are. Julian has been Julian and I have been working diligently to get the park open. That's been our goal. We now have we've made some substantial progress over the last few weeks. All the documents that were required from the contractor have been uploaded to the county as of July 3rd, except the handrail specifications, which are complete and waiting for the engineer to sign and seal them. He was out of town. We expect those to be uploaded within the next day or two. At that point, there will be nothing left for the contractor to send to the county. The county will review all those documents, and if they find them satisfactory, there will be a final inspection that will be conducted. And again, if that goes well, we can open the park. As Roy mentioned, Once the park is open, there is a requirement at a later point for a stormwater testing that needs to be done there, but that would occur after the park is open. That's not a requirement for us to open the park. Also, and I think I said this last time, it bears repeating this time, that certainly once the park is open, there will be, and I'm sure we will, the council will consider modifications to the park in terms of accessibility or other types of changes that we'd like to make. But at this point, our primary goal, main focus is to get the park open, get that goddamn fence down, and let the thing be available to people to use. I'm always pleased when my colleague, Mr. Schaefer, gives me his "the sky is falling" financial report about all these expenses that are coming. We don't know what additional expenses we will have. A project of this sort, where we entered into the contract a couple of years back, will likely have changes, cost overruns, project changes that were outside the scope of work. That's to be expected in something like this. And we will have to work through, once the park is open, we'll have to work through who pays for what, how much we have to pay, how much the contractor will have to pay, and we'll have some long discussions about that. But again, at this point, and maybe you'd like to have other things resolved, but at this point, the goal is to get the park open as soon as possible. At our executive committee meeting, or a closed session, as it's now, I'm told that we're not supposed to call it an executive committee. At our closed session that we had this evening, we met with our attorney to discuss our legal options should the materials submitted by the contractor be deemed insufficient by the county, as well as how the contract deals with these various different costs. And so we're preparing ourselves in the event that this does not work out, what our next steps are in regard to the contractor, to the county, and we'll deal with that when we deal with that. Now, I'm sure my colleague Martha has some suggestions about what we might do in the interim. Others of us will have the view that we're on the precipice of being done with the process, and we hope we should let it run and then see what happens as a result once all the materials are into the county. That's where we are now. That's as much as I have to tell you. I don't have any additional things that I'm concealing or anything of that sort. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Salt, we added an item under old business after the update on Page Park permit applications. You have comments or recommendations to make?
Thank you for accommodating that addition. And I'd like to thank Mr. Schwartz for bringing his comments forward. You know, I agree with many of them. So the reason I'm speaking right now is I think we need to acknowledge reality. We've been waiting a long time. As everyone agrees, what we have now is an ugly orange plastic fence around what's supposed to be a highlight of our community. We have, over a long time, heard many things, read many things in our newsletter, some of which turned out not to be true. So I'd like to share some comments and make essentially 3 suggestions for how we can improve our ability to handle whatever comes our way in the Page Park process. So I would like to humbly suggest that waiting is not a strategy. But before we get into that, we all deserve to know what happened with Page Park. Some of this has been already discussed. I just have 3 points for anybody who may not already know. The park was designed and built without Montgomery County review of plans or permission to build in the form of permits. So over a year ago, as Mr. Schwartz pointed out, we were issued a stop work order for the purpose of bringing the park in compliance with Montgomery County rules and Americans with Disability Act. Despite having initiated the process with Montgomery County in October of 2023, as of something like 3 o'clock today, there were still 3 categories that were denied. We often are hearing, well, our contractor told us this, or our contractor told us that Montgomery County told them this. I don't believe that's a proper way to communicate. We deserve to have a park that meets the needs of the community. And does that mean everybody? I believe it does mean everybody. Even if we have a legal opinion that determines we're not required to fully meet the 2010 ADA design standards, I think we should. And I think we should have a plan to get that done. And to my knowledge, the question of accessibility has not been resolved. And I agree that we should get the park open, but it's very easy to put aside and put off and not plan for or have a very, very long-term goal to meet the full accessibility needs of the community. So I think we also deserve to know what's being done to fix the problem. We've heard, and a lot of this is new to us, that the contractor was supposed to have submitted all the documents to DPS. Frankly, I believe I've heard that before, like a couple of times. So one of my suggestions, and this really doesn't officially require approval of the council, is to adopt a project management approach to handling this project. That means documenting every step. What needs to be done, in what order, what can be done simultaneously, by whom, in what time frame. And for those of you who have any experience with project management, there's always a communication component, identifying stakeholders, having very regular, structured communication, and any oral communication is documented in writing. If it was done orally and it's not in writing, it never happened. What is written is done, and we have very little in writing. Another key point of a typical project management approach is to anticipate possible points of failure and to develop contingency plans. And, you know, the first boss I ever had said, planning never works. Always, always have backup plans. We can do these things now. Develop a change control process. You know, maybe the original plan isn't going to work for DPS. It might not be working for us. How do we document and prepare for a change control process? And again, documenting all the communication and having it available for review. That is very important for project management. And I think it's very important to regain the trust of the residents to have accurate and full transparency. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to put up online our project plan and where we are. Some of you may not know, we have a graduate of an elite MBA program on our staff who probably knows all about project management, and he's glaring at me now, but we'll ignore that. So I really think this is something we can do. We don't need a formal decision of the council. We should be collecting documents and managing and preparing. What if the county says this or that about this or that? What's our backup plan? What should we be doing? What kind of expertise will we need? We should be thinking about those things. So another suggestion, and I'm going to present this in the form of a motion, is to engage technical experts to help us with the project, including an independent, licensed structural engineer or similarly licensed technical expert who meets the DPS requirements, and they would be reporting to the council for oversight and review, not reporting to the contractor. And also, having an ADA, or attorney specializing in ADA, advise us, what do we legally need to do for the park? And then, if there are things we may want to do that are not legally required, we can learn about those too. But right now, we don't really know. That is one motion, and I have another after this is considered, if it is going to be considered.
So I understand your motion as to engage 2 technical experts, one a licensed engineer who meets DPS requirements, and a second to engage a specialized ADA attorney. Is that correct?
Yes, independent licensed structural engineer or similarly licensed technical expert. And I will give the exact motion to the secretary.
I just want to make sure that other council members understand the motion. So it's
Do you want me to repeat it?
to engage an independent licensed technical engineer who meets DPS requirements to look at access issues. Is that what that engineer
No.
would do?
No.
Tell me what that engineer would do.
Can I start over?
Sure.
Okay, I'll repeat the motion and then explain sort of the rationale. The motion is to engage technical experts to help us with this project, including 1, an independent licensed structural engineer or similarly licensed technical expert who meets DPS requirements and reporting to the council. And the purpose of this is a second opinion to be able to help us develop contingency plans and potentially to guide the project through DPS, especially if we find out that other changes are made or the permit application was not approved. We would have this person available immediately to work toward resolution of potential problems, and again, be a second opinion on what's been done. Now, as I think I mentioned earlier, this is July. If we don't do anything, we have to consider ideas in September. And we could prepare contingency plans. We could have this person overseeing, looking at the project and potentially telling us what are points of vulnerability that maybe we haven't heard from the contractor.
So, well.
I'm sorry, I was talking on and on. I was explaining the motion, but okay.
So would you like to just repeat the motion?
Sure, and I can hand it to you if you wish.
Why don't you just repeat it?
To engage technical experts to help us with this project, including 1, an independent licensed structural engineer or similarly licensed technical expert who meets DPS requirements, reporting to the council for oversight and review, and 2, an attorney specializing in ADA for legal advice. That's the motion.
Does everybody understand what the motion is?
I have one question. What does engage mean in this context? Does that mean contract with?
Yes. Not hire as an employee, if that's what you're getting at.
Well, I'm just having.
Or
I could just-
consult in some.
Actually, let me see whether there's, first of all, whether there's support for the motion before we get into discussion. Is there support for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so that motion has been made by Councilmember Salt and supported by Councilmember Schaefer. So now we'll have discussion on the motion. Councilmember R.
Thank you. So I'm just, I wonder if we are, let me take a step back. I see the value in contingency planning for sure, and understanding kind of what the universe of available expertise looks like. understanding what different types of expertise might cost in addition to the costs we're already expecting, the sort of different aspects of additional support that the contractor might need to resolve the feedback we've received. I guess what I don't understand at this point, and this is procedurally, is how we would agree today to contract for a service that we haven't solicited input on or have any sense of kind of what the market looks like or how much we're being asked to sign up for. So I think I'd be open to a discussion about how we take the next step in preparing those contingencies, but engage, I think, is a challenging word without more information.
Other discussion? Yes.
So would you amend the motion to solicit finding the expert rather than making it seem like we're just going to go out and hire someone?
I'm open to modification if you would. Would you like to modify the motion? Or somebody? Mhm.
Okay, so you use the word engage or you don't?
To engage, yes.
So maybe not to engage, to locate or
Yeah, I mean, I think we could start by developing a slate of potential needs and beginning market research to understand how we might satisfy those needs and at what cost. And just, sorry, just so I understand as a process matter, although we don't have a meeting scheduled until September, if we get good information, both from the county and from this sort of foundational work, nothing would preclude us from coming back together to take the action to engage in a more formal way to contract with or issue an RFP if that's what's required. Between now and September, we could meet once a week between now and September if we had the need and the requirement, right? There's no limit on the number of.
But that's typically not the plan of what we do. I'm hoping to get ahead of the curve here. We've delayed long enough. I'm happy to modify the motion to make it something that we move closer to what I'm aiming for. I think doing nothing is not a good idea. So,
Are there other questions or other discussion? Then let me make a suggestion. So, okay, yeah, I'm wondering whether the next step that we could take is to direct the village manager to prepare specifications and any request for proposal to identify those two, request for proposal or any other process to identify those two technical experts and to understand what the work and costs for those experts would be.
I don't think we need an RFP to identify an expert.
Yeah, that's why I modified it to
Right,
say
okay.
that to direct the village manager to obtain information on the availability of these two experts, what we would like these experts to do, and the costs that would be associated with those experts. And that could simply be a direction from the council. And Councilman, I think that meets your requirement. And
Absolutely,
and
yeah. I would just like a little bit more information before we sign up for additional costs. And I personally think it's a good idea. I think ultimately we're going to be in a position where we're going to need expertise to continue the conversation with DPS. I think even though we're approaching the complete package, I think Councilwoman Salt said, the work we're doing now is pre-construction work, right? We are nearing the end of the beginning. And then we're now going to have to turn to the post-construction work where I think there will be some additional complexities that we're maybe not situated to address. And I fully agree. I think it makes sense to get out in front of that and not wait for them to come back with questions we can't answer, to start finding someone who can help us answer them. I guess I'm just not prepared today to commit to that.
Yes, Councilmember Mazie and
Well,
Councilmember Salt.
If the current proposal, has been modified by the chairman, is that we ask the village manager to investigate who might do this sort of work and what we might need, and in terms of all that, I don't have a problem with that. I think it'd be foolhardy to engage somebody at this point before we find out whether, I know I live sometimes in a Pollyannish world, although I don't know how I do that because I read the papers every morning, but that's another story. It's certainly possible that we will have the project approved by DPS within the next 2-3 weeks or so. I mean, maybe. And if that's the case, we have a different set of needs than we have if the thing is turned down. So if the proposal is simply to ask the village manager to investigate who might do this sort of stuff and what it might cost, that's fine. And we can make a decision to engage or not to engage when that time is appropriate.
Could we consider a timeline as well as part of the motion, perhaps either independently or tying it to the DPS action, within a certain amount of time following an initial response from DPS on the permitting or something to that effect? So, in the interest of continuing to move this conversation forward, we've got sort of a date certain, or at least, N plus some number of days.
I would prefer something like 30 days. If we have a very delayed response from DPS, I mean, who knows, that could be.
And I'd be happy with something even less than that if, if we're looking at just a handful of potential experts.
I suspect, based upon what we've learned and know about the DPS process, that they are 2 to 3 weeks they have working days to review any complete proposal. So I would suggest that at a minimum it be 30 days, Councilmember R. And that would take us, into August. If there were, those materials could be shared with council members in August. If there were an interest in a meeting in August, that could be scheduled. Otherwise, we're on top of the September meeting and close to it, and would be taking a step forward, Councilmember Salt, to identify those resources should we need them.
Okay, I would also suggest that, remember, this is a permit application to begin construction. It isn't even the review of the work done. So I think we will need assistance with that piece too.
Right, okay, so would you withdraw your motion? And do we have a sense of the council that what we'd like the village manager to do is to investigate and develop specifications and costs over the next 30 days to report to council for these technical experts?
Reluctantly.
Okay.
It's a minor semantic change, but could we say within 30 days?
Within 30
Sure.
days.
So if we've got better information sooner, let's not sit on it.
Okay, and I would say that if it's not possible to get it within 30 days, that the village manager should let us know what the holdup is.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, I mean, you may see this proposal again. I do think finding with an ADA attorney what the real truth is, instead of all of these different things we've heard, that is better sooner than later.
That's part of the specifications or the
Right.
conversation.
And I can work with the village manager to flesh out more of what I have in mind.
Great, thank you.
So-
Then does everybody understand our further discussion? Yeah.
So where are we? Is Councilwoman Salt rescinding her motion?
That's what I understand,
And then-
and we have a sense of the council at the village manager.
That needs to be stated, so that's on the record.
Right.
And then we're voting on a new motion.
No, there is no new motion.
There is no
It's
motion.
I have
simply-
another motion.
There's,
But
there's,
this one is withdrawn.
this one is simply a consensus on the council to
Okay.
direct the village manager, as I've described. The original motion has been rescinded. Okay, so that takes care of that one. Councilwoman Salt, Councilmember
Yeah.
Salt?
I move that we create a page on our website for detailed, accurate, timely explanation and updates on the status of Page Park. And that would hopefully include a detailed project plan and timeline, and records of some of the communication that has occurred.
Is that in the form of a motion, or are you just asking?
I kind
it-
of added edits, I'll repeat the motion I have, to create.
Well, let me just ask you a question about it before you go through
Yeah.
additional explanation. The Village Council has a communications committee, and that communications committee could meet and consider and recommend to the council a web page like that. That's what the charge, as I understand it, of the communications committee is. So why would you accept a proposal to request that the communications committee meet and do just that, which is to work with the village manager and the assistant manager on a website for the status of Page Park, and it could discuss other improvements and additions to the website as well, but we could also be focused specifically on the status of Page Park.
On the one hand, that might be ideal.
You
but
are the
it will
chair
ta-
of that
I know,
committee.
but it will take too much time. I think people deserve to know now, and that will take forever.
You are the chair of the committee.
And
You
I'm
can-
suggesting that it's also okay to come to the council with a proposal. And are you saying you don't want to even engage a proposal?
No, what
to
I'm suggesting is
communicate
a
with the
way to
public?
bring way to bring the improvement that you're suggesting forward in the same fashion that we have brought other proposals to the council. So that's all I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Now,
and I
let me
would-
see if there's discussion about Councilwoman Solt's proposal. Mayor White?
I'm sorry, what would take too much time? Because I thought you said create a web page, not a website. What,
A web page?
I meant webpage. Mhm.
Okay.
web page, yeah.
So that, and I wonder whether the assistant village manager could give us an idea of, once specifications were developed or ideas were developed, how long it would take to develop that web page?
I don't see it taking longer than a couple days at max.
Okay, so
As long
if
as we
the,
have all the details and the data and that we can collate together, sure, just a
Okay.
couple days.
so if the chair were to convene a meeting of the communications committee, and that committee is comprised of and Daniel, and that's chaired by Councilmember Solt, I understand? So the timeframes are under your control.
I would like to revise my motion and ask the village manager to create a page, if it's only taking a few days, creating a web page with detailed, accurate, timely explanations, and with updates on the status of Page Park.
So is that in the form of a motion?
It is in the form of a motion.
Okay, is there support for that motion? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand, are you, the way you said it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're asking him to create the page, the verbiage.
Go
May I?
ahead, Councilmember R.
I would suggest that the construction, the technical construction of a web page is the least of our problems in executing this motion, this recommendation, which I fully support. But the work is going to be in compiling, organizing, and presenting the accurate information you're describing, not coding a web page. So if we choose to develop that content, I would suggest it has to be a joint effort of the Communications Committee and the Parks and Grounds Committee, at least, to ensure that the information is in fact complete and accurate. And so to go ahead, I'm not sure this is a thing we're going to execute before the end of this week, despite the fact that I think we could have a shell of a web page up probably by Wednesday. It's the content that's going to take us some time, and that's where I think we should spend our energy, compiling an accurate accounting of where things are.
I agree. So, I don't know if I need an official motion here to work with the Parks Committee, but I believe speed is of the essence here in communicating with the public.
So I would,
And
So I would suggest that the chair of the Communications Committee and the chair of the Parks Committee have a conversation about how they jointly could develop the specifications that Councilmember R, the content specifications that Councilmember R has suggested, and then schedule with their respective committees the work to do that.
And in the meantime, we could probably, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the village manager, but I think we could probably also build the shell into which this information will go while we're deciding on what to communicate and how. The space, the kind of a general organization of the key considerations, pulling some of the existing DPS documents, that type of thing. So we are prepared to launch when we have a sense of how we'd like to present the information.
Right, and I would hope the staff has most of the documents. I don't, you know.
So is it the sense of the council that the chairs of those committees, request that the chairs of those committees meet to help flesh this out? Yes, Council Member Measy.
Well, I'm not certain that I understand fully what people want here. The documents that have been filed with the county are filed by the contractor, and and they're in front of the county at this point. I guess we could download those documents. I'm not sure. Julian can tell, because we don't necessarily have access to that sort of material. The emails that have gone back and forth, and there have been countless emails between Julian and the contractor, would those be documents that we need? Would the various communications that have taken place between the village and the county on these various things, would they be required? When I hear people talk about transparency, it seems as if, all those things are things that people want. I'm not sure exactly what's going on to this website.
I think that's the work I'm describing, is the culling, the organizing, the presenting. I think part of the problem is we've got a pretty significant volume of conflicting information.
Yeah.
There are truths in there, both about our obligations and the status of our satisfaction of those obligations. I think our work is in pulling that information out and presenting it in an accessible way for the members of the community who are interested in progress but don't have the capacity, the time, the whatever to try and figure out who this person that sent this email and how they relate to a DPS employee that sent a different email, and who's boss and what we knew when. And I think at this point we're looking prospectively to say, here's where we are now, and as we make progress, we will keep you updated with the facts. And so I think you're asking great questions, and
That's the goal. Yeah.
those are exactly the questions why, exactly the reasons why I think this warrants some communication or some discussion among us to give useful information and not just continue to sort of muddy the water with a document dump.
I agree, and I would also say if there's any resident that has something they would like to know or they think should be on there to, please send me an email.
So,
And, why don't we agree to work with the Parks Committee to come up with appropriate disclosure about the Page Park project.
Mayor White?
I'm sorry. Martha, I wish you wouldn't use the word disclosure, as if that sounds like things are being covered up here. It's a conspiratorial term. Disclosure, find a different term.
I'm sorry you don't like the word disclosure. I'm a former federal employee, and we probably use that term several times a day. It means releasing or providing, making available information is what I intended.
You're developing conspiracy theory about this whole thing, that things are being covered up.
Okay,
Come
well,
on.
let's, if both council members will let me intercede here, I will. And I think that we have a consensus among the council that, oh, Mayor White, yes, please.
Since I think the staff is going to be doing the bulk of the work on this page, I'd like to ask Julian and Jason, do you foresee any problems, pitfalls in getting this page done? I would imagine it's going to be updated probably a couple of times a week, depending on what we hear. So what are your feelings about this?
Well, exactly that the construction of the page is not the issue, and that's relatively easy, but the content, I mean, I think we're talking about new content. It's not so much assembling or aggregating what we have already. We have content that we've put out. We put out something in the newsletter every month. If people think that's inadequate, then it's no good to just assemble that same content and put it on this new page. We need an entirely new set of documents or content, which then of course begs the question, how is that developed? Who writes that? So I think I guess the committee approach is a good one, but staff does not have the content that we're talking about just ready to dump on this page tomorrow as soon as we get the website up and running, because we have a lot of content, but if it's deemed to be inadequate, we need new content.
So Mayor White, let's see what happens by having the chairs of those two committees have some initial conversations and then seeking input from their committee members as well, and see what can come back in the form of a constructive and useful proposal from one or the other or both committees. And I have every confidence, knowing both of those committee chairs, that something constructive and useful will come out of those conversations. If we're okay with that, Martha, is there anything else you wanted to propose?
Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you, then. Let's move on to an update on the prospective tenant for the Red House, and I think Councilman Orr, this is yours.
That's right, thank you. So I'll start by giving kind of a general sense of how we got here, then a little bit of an update on a recommendation I think that we're looking to make today, and then I'll give a little bit of my personal opinion and offer the opportunity for the other members of our ad hoc group to weigh in as well with their opinions. So I think we've reported a couple of times before that we received a handful of proposals, I think at one point 4, but really 3 complete or nearly complete proposals for a prospective tenant for the Red House, all some combination of grocery and dine-in or take-out food. We also engaged, in addition to working with the village manager and our broker, we engaged a real estate attorney, a commercial real estate attorney, to help us both think through the packages we received, but also to be prepared to have follow-on conversations, to do lease negotiation and understand kind of what we should be looking for in a prospective tenant. Based on some input from our attorney and the village manager and our broker and our own evaluation of the materials, we downscoped those 3 proposals to 2 with whom we met in person at the Red House to walk through, ask some questions of them, and have them give them the opportunity to ask some questions of us and sort of provide a more fulsome presentation of their vision for the building and for the business. After we took those 2 meetings, the council member participants in the working group got together, shared our personal observations, and kind of talked through the pros and cons of the 2 proposals. And I think we are coming today to the council to ask for agreement for the village manager and our broker and our attorney to move forward in further lease discussions toward a more fulsome letter of intent from one of those 2 proposals, for one of those 2 prospective tenants. So the 2 prospective tenants we met with were the business currently styled as Your Cafe, as well as Piles Provisions. Some of you may recall the ownership group of Piles Provisions came to a council meeting several months ago to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their vision. That proposal is a upscale, locally sourced deli with sandwiches, beer and wine, as well as dry goods and takeout deli. so both sandwiches and sliced meats, cheeses, pastas, other kind of locally sourced dry goods and groceries, as well as beer and wine for a beer and wine menu and takeout, so a package store version. The Your Cafe proposal was a bit more of a traditional coffee shop, luncheon style place, a small menu with some baked on premises breads, coffees, tea, possibly a tea service, as well as salads and light bites. Both proposals were approximately the same amount of time, so they were expecting to be open approximately the same hours. I will say, based on our discussion, and I'll kind of jump to the punchline here, based on our discussion, we are encouraging the council to direct the village manager, our attorney, and our broker to meet with the leadership group of Piles Provisions to discuss potential next steps and see if we can come to an agreement. We appreciated the presentation from the Your Cafe team and the product. There were a couple of things that stood out for us in particular with the Piles Provisions proposal. First of all three proposals, theirs would involve the least structural change to the building. So to the extent that one of the goals that we talked about as a group was maintaining some of the historical interest of the building and facilitating the kind of as quickly as possible getting someone into the building. The other proposals contemplated an almost complete down to the studs renovation of the main floor of the building, whereas the Piles Provisions team would like to use the building almost exactly as it is. The other kind of major driving point for us was that the product, the dry goods, the grocery, the sandwiches, as well as the beer and wine kind of right out of the gate, seemed more in line with the expectations of the community and more likely to kind of right out of the gate show a kind of return on investment. The Your Cafe folks were interested in a much longer rent abatement and did not intend to seek beer and wine licensing at first or potentially at all. As I said, both of them have approximately the same hours, although the staffing projections for the Piles Provisions team seem more reasonable to us as a new business, particularly in the food and beverage space. It'll be a lot of the team themselves shouldering the initial burden. No wait staff, no additional costs associated with maintaining a larger kitchen or wait staff. The individual responsible for that business has extensive experience in both running himself and also providing consulting services to other restaurant, food and beverage business owners. Currently operates a food truck associated with a local brewery, which gave us a little bit more confidence in the nature of his estimates, cost estimates, time to profitability, and we also got a positive read from our broker, who also met independently with all the proposals, and Piles was his recommendation as well.
So, thank you, Councilman R. I understand that you're making a motion to direct the village manager, our attorney, and the broker, thank you. And I would suggest the committee chair, to the extent, the ad hoc committee chair, to the extent he is able to participate, to meet with representatives of Piles Provisions to discuss next steps and develop a proposal for those next steps to be brought back to council.
I guess, so in principle, that's what I'm proposing. I think the critical next step is to communicate with the Piles Provisions team and to sort of begin a negotiation regarding the terms of an LOI and potential lease. If that has to be memorialized in a motion, I'm fine doing it that way. Okay. But because there remain some variables, I think we're not comfortable asking the council at this point to approve a lease that we haven't seen, to approve an LOI that we haven't seen, but we can't really get much further in these negotiations without kind of at least some action on behalf of the whole council, which is, I think, why we're here. So I'm happy to do it as a motion. I'm also, if everyone agrees, also happy to just take the next step in the conversation with the expectation that we'll bring for formal action to the council a determination, assuming that the negotiations turn out satisfactorily, action for the council to take with respect to entering a lease that you will all have the opportunity to review.
So you're asking either a consensus from the council, or you're offering a motion
That's right.
to communicate with Piles Provisions about our intention to seek further agreement.
That's right. I'm happy to, I was sort of angling for a sort of consent of the council agreement,
Okay.
but if the chair would prefer a motion, I'm happy to
I'm
offer it in
fine
the form
with
of a
a
motion.
consensus, but let's see what, let's see whether there's any discussion about that. Councilman Measy.
Dan, that's fine. Could you reassure us about the financials of these folks? Do they have the money to do what they say they're going to do?
So I'm far from an expert, so Councilman Schaefer, feel free to jump in here. But we got extensive financial information from at least the two proposals we saw, and of the two, the financial health, but more importantly, I think the kind of thoughtful analysis of costs and costs associated with the work and time to profitability. We had greater confidence in their assessment. Roy, I don't know if you
I
have
guess
other thoughts.
my second question then is, if you start, our next council meeting, as we've mentioned a few times, is not until September. It's 2 months from now. Is there a possibility that this could come together more quickly than that, and that we're delaying the start of this stuff?
A slim possibility. Our attorney has given us a sense that on the good end, it's a 3 to 6 month process. So.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments from council or other members of the
Well,
committee?
I would just add that what Dan said, we unanimously agreed on this tenant. So there was no disagreement among the working group.
Okay. So any other comments? What I understand is then it's a sense of the council that we should proceed to communicate with Piles Provisions, making use of the expertise of the village manager, our attorney, the broker, and to the extent the ad hoc committee chair wants to participate in those conversations, and whatever develops will be brought back to council.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody that disagrees with that consensus? Okay. Great.
Just one final point. So the village manager has been very helpful and deeply involved here. So I guess before we close this out, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add, either about your personal observations or where we're going next.
Yeah, I think the way that it was just stated as the consensus sounded better to me than the original motion, because the original motion, I was going to say, it sounded like we were all going to meet, and probably we want to meet with the attorney separately from meeting with Piles to develop a lease proposal, and maybe an individual meeting with Piles without the attorney. So that there would be different permutations like that I would have recommended, but it sounded like the way you just stated it in the consensus statement sounds fine, that we'll just proceed with all the parties to bring back some type. The next step would be a lease proposal to bring back to the full council.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Does
Thank
everybody
you.
understand what we're doing? Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Council Member R, and also other members of the committee. This brings us into new business. We have a report from the Public Safety Committee on the use of off-duty Montgomery County police officers.
I'll be quick. The Safety Committee has produced the first Safety Committee report for the year, and we have a copy for each council member, as well as there is a copy for each resident that is here. I will tell you, it's a 20-page packet, and it is detailed in everything that has transpired this first year. We have been in contract with Montgomery County PD. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us, email me, and hopefully we will answer your questions. It's a lot of information here, and I think you will be surprised on some of the things that you read. So thank you. I'll leave it over on the table.
Are there questions from council? Yes, Council Member
Good.
R.
Yeah, just one question, and I don't, what are we envisioning as a council as the next step for, or from this report? I see, I just flipped quickly, I see there are recommendations, and are we expecting that this will start a conversation over the coming months about implementation of individual recommendations and kind of follow-up actions, or is there a particular kind of next step you're envisioning for this where we'll come together in one conversation and knock all of this out?
In quick, all of the above.
Okay. So this will be sort of a standing agenda item perhaps where we kind of revisit some of these issues.
Yes. We've addressed several of different council members' questions here. And given, again, this is the first year that we have had a full relationship with Montgomery County PD, we're gathering stats for the first time. So as some of you may remember in the last meeting, people wanted to know a lot of things. Well, we can only go with what filters that the Montgomery County PD uses to obtain information. And if there's other things that people would like to know, then please send us. If it's not covered, we will be able to find out those information, those questions, and answer those questions specifically.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the extension of 4602 North Park Avenue lease, copy of which is in our book. Village Manager Mansfield.
The current tenant of Cityline Studios has been there since 2021, and their lease has been extended several times, 1 year at a time, and the current lease expires on August 31st. So I included it in your packet. Because we were not scheduling a council meeting in August, we wanted to bring this up today. The tenant is very interested in staying and extending the lease under the current terms. We've been very happy with them from the landlord side as the tenant there. They've done a very nice job keeping the house up and paying rent on time and all those other good things. So we are very happy to recommend that we continue with them in the space. Their rent has not been increased at all since they arrived in 2021. It's still $3,000 per month. So I indicated in the memo the council could consider a rent increase. But the previous extensions have not involved any increases.
Question.
So discussion, yes, Council.
I'm
Member
glad
Tyler.
you said that, Julie. So it hasn't been increased since 2021. And I just bring this off the top of our head. Working with our realtor for the Red House, if by chance, have you asked him what the rent would be in this day market now for that particular location? And if not, can we ask him what the going rate would be for that size, everything that's in there? Because I think we have to be realistic. Things go up in price, and even though it's 3 years, we don't need to gouge somebody, but we also need to be real that we can't have the lowest rents here. And I think it's more than, how many people share that rent?
There are 10 people on the lease, and
Yeah.
it would be the same people continuing. The current rent is well below market.
Right.
We haven't asked the broker, for that exact analysis right now, but
I
the previous tenant was paying over $5,000 a month for the same space.
I
But that
think
that was years ago.
years
we
ago.
went through a whole period of not being able to rent this space for several years.
Right.
And we were
But I
looking-
also
so-
think that it's worth us to know in this today's market what it would be. Does it necessarily have to go to 5,000? No. But at least it gives us a parameter of where, let's say he says it's $4,000. Well, do we go up that much? Do we not go up that much? But we need something to start with and not just take a random, well, let's increase it by 5% or let's increase it by 10%. Let's have some type of number that gives us an idea. and then we can work up or down from that.
Other comments? Yes, Council Member Measy.
Julian, is there some way of breaking out how much the building costs us versus how much the rent covers? In other words, what are our carrying costs for this building in terms of, utilities, maintenance?
Utilities are covered by the tenant.
Uh-huh.
So there's not a whole lot of extra costs for us. We have a maintenance plan for the heating and cooling system that's not very expensive. We are subject to having to make repairs to the house. I think nominal repairs are included in the lease for the tenant to make, but they are covering the regular utilities, so we don't have those expenses.
So at an income of $36,000 a year, we're making money in there.
Sure, yes.
So the idea of raising the rent would mean that we could make more money.
Are there other, yes?
Yeah, well, I mean, we own that building outright. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can argue there's an opportunity cost by not having the funds we would have if we sold the house. It's not quite that simple, but, and I agree with everything Councilmember Tyler said, but I also feel that we don't want to be in a position where we put some sort of onerous increase on the tenants. The fact that I think none of the 10 have left in 3 years indicates that they're all pretty happy. So I would just propose raising the rent by $500 a month, which clearly is a significant increase. It's only a 1-year lease, right, that we're talking about? The extension.
Yeah, that's been the
Right,
the pattern before, is 1 year.
So it's a rent they can live with. It recognizes the fact that they're still clearly getting a rent below market. And it would get this kind of settled because they have been good tenants. So I think that sort of is a compromise. So I would make a motion to raise the rent by $500 a month.
Is there support for that motion? Mayor White? Support it? Okay. Any discussion about the motion?
I have it.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that. I still would like to get an analysis from our Realtor to know what our property is worth for
You mean
a
an
rental
appraisal?
market.
Oh.
Appraisal for a rental market. It's good for us to know what our property can garner.
Other conversation, Councilman Measy?
I have no problem with us finding out what we can get. The problem, of course, is that we can get, but it depends upon what changes somebody else might require if they bought the place. I'd also point out that one of the reasons we were supportive of this tenant was that we thought it contributed something to the community. We had a group of artists there and they have open houses from time to time. They invite people in. They have kids coming through as well to look at the art. So this is not just a rental thing. It's in some respects a community amenity. And so I think that we have to look at the low rate in that context.
So, other comments?
Well,
yes.
Well, and I think that the consensus is it's still
Yeah.
a rent below market. And what I also point, it's not really a public facility. It's not accessible. It's not a retail location. Right. So those events are very.
My point,
Sure.
Roy, is simply that you might get an attorney who wants the place and who will pay us a lot more, but that's a
Exactly,
that's a
right.
business. These people are not in business.
So let me make a suggestion, and yes. Julian? Yeah.
Well, you haven't voted yet, but if there's agreement on this $500 a month, I mean, that's about a 70% increase. 17.
Right, and that would be up to.
But no, well, just a question. If there's negotiation on their end, they don't want to do that, or they come back with a lower amount, or are we going back to the council, or are we negotiating this through since we're not going to meet again until the lease expires?
This was actually going to be part of what I would suggest to consider 2 additional elements of this. And the first is to recognize that they could refuse and counteroffer, as you've just suggested. And the second is that, given that we won't be meeting until September again, that we agree on a month-to-month continuation of the present lease until we come to final terms, which would allow them to continue to be there, allow some discussion between the village manager and the representatives of who are in the house, and then come back to us with a final proposal. Because, of course, as the village manager says, we can propose $500. They don't have to accept it. They could very easily say, well, what about $250? So why don't we find out what works, rather than throwing them out because they don't accept the 500, and acknowledge that we could go month to month until the final contract is drawn, and that would be an amendment to the current contract. Councilman.
Well, there's no
Schaefer.
downside for them. I mean, then if we're going to do it that way, then maybe we look at another tenant. It's not a take the lowest offer until you agree to pay us more. So, I don't think, I understand it's 17%, but it's on a very low base, which kind of skews the percentage. And also it's the first increase in 3 years. I think it's a very fair rent.
Okay.
I don't think we should
Yeah.
lock ourselves into a month-to-month. Just let them say yes or no, and then we'll decide what we want to do.
Okay, well, there's a motion. Any further discussion? Councilman
I
Art?
apologize if I missed this at the beginning, but are they on a one-year lease that's just an annual extension of this, or did they flip to the month-to-month contemplated in this lease?
They're on a 1 year that expires in August 31st.
But with the same term, so if they
Yes.
expire without a new lease in place, they're presumptively month-to-month tenants until we give them 2 months' notice.
No, I think their lease is over. They would have to,
their
right
lease
now,
is
they would
over.
have to move if they didn't.
no. Julian's shaking his head yes.
Well, what does the lease say?
We need to be clear.
I don't think the lease has a provision beyond the expiration date.
Upon expiration of the initial term, unless either party notifies the other party in writing 2 months prior to the expiration of the initial term of the lease of their intent to terminate, the tenants shall be considered a holdover tenant and may remain on the premises at the same rent on a month-to-month basis thereafter.
Okay.
So
Yes.
if we don't take any action, they become month-to-month tenants. So I'm not sure whether we need
Okay.
to sort of officially and formally
Right.
include that in a motion.
So they're month to month
That's right.
because it says 2 months in advance and we haven't received a notice that they're leaving. So,
And we haven't given them a notice.
And we haven't
Termination,
given them a notice.
the termination has to be 2 months in advance,
Right.
and neither side wants to terminate, so.
So we're into.
Yes, it would automatically translate into a month-to-month after August 31st.
And we're into an October meeting to make a final decision about the lease in that case, because we need to provide them at least 2 months' notice
Why-
as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
No, that's for termination.
Okay, well, then we would definitely.
That's for termination, that's not for continuing the rent, continuing the lease with a new
Right.
rent.
Then we would definitely, we should talk to a broker now, because I think it's a very fair offer, so.
So there's a, Councilman Measy?
Yeah, I have no problem with talking about this increase, because as Roy points out, it's 17%, but it's over a 3-year period, so it hasn't been raised during that period of time. I would remind the council that that property sat empty for an extended period of time, and we were unable to find anybody to take the property. It's not like it's not something that can be converted to a coffee shop. It's, we thought maybe a law firm or insurance people or something. Nobody was interested in having that place. So we were very pleased when these folks showed up. It's easy to say, let's look for somebody else, but you have to count the month's rent that you will be giving up while the place stays empty. And so let's not go right to that yet.
So, yeah, there is the motion, and so did the motion incorporate the suggestion that Council Member Tyler made to obtain an appraisal as well, or?
Right, but we can do that anyway. Does not need to
We
be
could,
part of the motion.
yeah, okay. So it's a sense of the council that we should obtain an appraisal for the house, and the motion is to propose a lease of $3,500 a month for 1 year. Does everybody understand the motion? Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, let's call for all those in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
those opposed, same sign. You could.
Yes.
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 Abstain. Seeing no further business on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Arndt?
I think the one issue we didn't resolve in that motion or in that discussion is how to address a request for negotiation.
Would you like to make a proposal?
For the purposes of discussion, I move to empower the village manager to negotiate on behalf of the village in coordination, in discussions with the current tenant.
Is there support? Yeah.
But it would still be subject to council approval, the final.
I think,
Okay.
yeah. I, to be honest, I assumed only we could make the final determination, but I
Okay.
guess I should maybe have asked that
That's
question.
true. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so there's been a motion to.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been supported. Any further discussion? Everybody understand the motion? Okay.
To negotiate on behalf of the village
Village
with the current tenant.
with current, is it should they not accept the offer, or?
That's fine.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Roll call?
Okay.
R?
Yes.
R, yes. Mizzy? Mizzy, yes. Schaefer?
Yes.
Schaefer, yes. Sol, yes. Tyler? Yes. Tyler, yes. White?
Yes.
White, yes. Pastrana?
Abstain. With that, I think we are through with the meeting of July 8th, 2024, of the Village Council. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for observing. Have a wonderful 2 months until we see you again. Could be before that.